Welcome to the Value Builder Podcast, where we focus on real estate with a value-add mindset. Real strategies, real operators, real outcomes. Let's dive in.
Today I have Paul Frank on the pod. Paul has been in commercial real estate for over 40 years. He's a developer, general contractor, broker, and his motto is dirt to disposition, and he has done it all. Class A office building, retail centers, built to suits, McDonald's, Dutch Bros, pretty much you name it. In this episode, we dig in deep why shifting away from development after 4 decades, and answer might surprise you. We'll talk about over $500,000 permitting fees just for 10,000 square feet building, or let's say a coffee shop remodeling that's taking 3 years and still no permits, and why light industrial demand is through the roof right now, but nobody can build, and what asset class Paul is most bullish on right now. And if you want to understand what's really happening on the ground of development and brokerage, this is the episode. So please welcome Paul Frank. First, can you tell us right now, predominantly in your career, whether you're doing more brokerage or development?
Recently, I've shifted more towards the brokerage side of it and growing my brokerage team globally. I still have quite a few development projects in the works, but at this point in my career, the difficulties in the entitlement process is kind of worn on me. I'm coaching a number of people and selling off some of my projects to them to prosecute. But at this point, they've kind of worn me down and sucked a bit of the fun out of the development side. I've just been doing it, like you said, for over 40 years. So it can get to you a little bit.
That makes sense. So 40 years, that's definitely many, many miles. And I don't think many of our listeners have that many years under their belts. You mentioned that entitlement became much more difficult. From my experience, the entitlements I've done in the city of Chicago, they're taking longer than expected, but it's still manageable. Maybe I don't have a reference of what has been 20 years ago. I hear from the guys, 20, 30 years ago, it was so much easier, less expensive. So when you say much more difficult, what is that mainly? Is that, I know you're in California, is that maybe state by state, or maybe that's saturation of entitlements? So, what's the reason right now we have not such a great taste compared to before?
Yeah, it's not just California, but California is certainly the epicenter of difficulties in that arena. But I'm licensed in a dozen or so states on the brokerage side, and I've done development all over the country and some international work as well. But especially after COVID, it's been getting progressively more difficult. You have two levels of entitlements. You have by right, so just building permits. On the building permit side of it, one of the things that has added to the difficulties is the soft versions of submittals. Before, we used to submit hard plans and they'd redline. You'd take the plans back in and they would address those red lines. Many jurisdictions now, you will send in your first round and address everything, but because they're soft copies on the computer, they'll come up with a list of another 6 or 8 things that they didn't address on the first set, which was not how it used to be.
Yes.
And then on the discretionary entitlement side, which is where they can say no. So it's not just a building permit, but say a conditional use permit for a drive-through. The hoops and process to get through that, especially post-COVID, has become significantly more difficult.
Well, I experienced both actually in Chicago and Milwaukee. I remember where we had a second and third set of red lines, which were not happening before, which is throwing everything through the loop. But after COVID, I agree the timelines increased. Do you think that's because of the staffing? Why did timeline increase? You mentioned it. What's the reason to think overall? Because the people don't have enough people? What's in your view?
I'll be candid on it. There's a couple of things. One, I know a lot of these people in planning and building departments for decades and I don't mean this to be disrespectful, but their grind and work ethic is different than yours and I's. is. Those people have been confiding in me over the last, 6, 8 years about how difficult this new generation that is working for them is. They're working from home and remotely. Nobody holds them accountable and they're not getting their work done. So I have a group that was somewhat difficult to manage and get through the process before that are ready to leave the business because this new group is so difficult and lacking drive and work ethic and accountability. And then you just have the nature of government where they seem to make it more difficult to justify their existence. We have one, we actually brokered it, but it's a remodel on a coffee shop, and we do a lot of Dutch Bros coffee work. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah, and this is just a remodel from another failed concept in a kiosk to a Dutch Bros, and it's just about 3 years, and building permits are not issued, not ground up. This is just a remodel, and this particular AHJ agency having jurisdiction decided that because it was Dutch Bros that they needed a sound study, they needed a traffic study, and it just kept getting more and more complex and more expensive.
Now, do you think there's light in the tunnel that might change? For the context, last year I flew in Thailand with my son. We went to a Muay Thai camp, but we spent some time in Hong Kong on a layover, and I was blown away. Of course, being in real estate, I was just passing by a construction site, and blown away the speed and the organization of construction. I don't want to talk down about how we built here, but it just felt like they were so more, organized, maybe from speed perspective. And obviously, I think it comes down to really good planning and probably approval process. I don't know how they do it. Don't have friends over there. I would like to understand it. But looking at the COVID videos when they build the hospitals in 6 months, it's kind of mind blowing. Do you think there is a light in the tunnel with AI, and maybe we can somehow synchronize those approval processes that just like maybe it would take the human in the loop who needs to put everything in one box, and if it doesn't box doesn't fit, maybe we can expand the box.
Yeah, the light at the end of the tunnel potentially is the implementation of AI in the process, but candidly, unfortunately, the government doesn't operate in a proactive and efficiency model
Mhm.
where if there is or are ways to shorten that period of time and maybe limit human interaction, the government system is based on growth, right? From their
Yeah.
pensions and everything. So I really, really don't know. I'll give you another example that we just ran into in the last 2 years. Walk-in cooler for a project, which is a snap together walk-in cooler like
Hmm.
you'd see at 7-Eleven or a freezer. The AHJ came back, or the building department came back and requested structural calculations on the walk-in freezer, to which we went to the manufacturer who does these all over the country, and they said, "What are you talking about?" They had never before run into anybody asking for structural calcs on a walk-in freezer, which I believe cost me about $3,000 to get calcs done on this literal snap together freezer box, which then delayed the project or the installation of it by, gosh, I don't know, it was at least 6, 8 weeks because of that one component.
Yeah. That's what's happened nowadays.
So stay tuned. It's been the good news, I suppose, is that if you don't have my perspective um, over decades and you're new to it, it's just the rules of engagement and you accept it. It used to be geographically so much different. Like even back to the early 2000s, I did a medical project in Oklahoma. And I walked in there and got building permit, lot split, a rezone, and the mayor and the city council took me out to dinner. It was just a fabulous experience, and it took days to get through it. And if I had done the same project, I remember calculating in California, That process, I believe, was $547, believe it or not. Whereas if I had done it in California, it would have taken me at least a couple years and well over $2 million in entitlement costs.
Yeah, those. I can't imagine how it was easier. Um, I've never experienced that, but I've heard from other folks that they definitely in the past was like that. On that note, the way I have a little hack, for let's say in the city of Chicago, we built 3 flats. It's an infill lots. We just built 2 or 3 a year. And the way we expedite this process right now in the last 3 years, so we just simply build the same project and we buy only the same size lot.
Mm-hmm.
So we almost like have a case law, because if it changes a little bit, it just throws off everything, right? But if it's done already, pretty much the same lot, same project, same plans, then we somehow expedite the process. That's a little hack that we have. But then, of course, it complicates the process. We have to find the same exact lots.
Yeah.
It's a lot of complexity right now.
Yeah, when you go into commercial, that can, like Dutch Bros Coffee on their kiosk, for example, or Seven
Yeah.
Brews or any of those. Some of them actually just have units that they bring in on a trailer and set. Like that's Seven Brews model now. The issue that we have is that in most cases, drive-throughs are discretionary entitlements. So that's where you get into the on and off site and queuing and all of those different aspects, and whether sound studies are required or traffic studies. But yeah, if you can systemize the construction side of that with a set of plans that has been developed over different iterations of permitting and remove the red lines, what you probably find is that you still get red lines even when you submit those plans
Exactly.
that have been.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Unless it falls in the same desk of the same reviewer,
Yeah. Yeah. And even sometimes it'll hit the same desk and they'll find something
Yeah.
new that they want to play with. So
Yeah.
frustrating.
Exactly. Now, so I want to touch on the topic of your career early on, being a developer, and right now focusing on a brokerage. What I see with the folks, who has like long career, 34 years, I think they typically I see start leasing properties, buying homes, then becoming an owner of apartments, and they gradually, graduating in a development, at the tail end of their career. You start developing very early, and right now you expanding in brokerage and coaching agents. I understand that there's difficulties in development. Maybe you can speak to that. Why do you think you went not like the other, but a little different direction that's most of the folks, I think, in real estate?
You mean out of the development and into the brokerage arm?
Correct.
Yeah, I had my own brokerage for 35 plus years, which was a separate arm to the development and the commercial property management and the construction. And I was never really interested in growing a brokerage operation, more so because it's just more people to be responsible for and more liability and exposure, which I've never been real excited about. My more of a focus in the brokerage world is a result of a move that I made with my brokerage company about 4 years ago that eliminated a lot of the downside, or virtually all of the downside of the brokerage side of it. And that's allowed me to expand in ways that, frankly, I never thought about. That's been pretty exciting. Brought the fun back into it for me, at least at this phase in my career.
That's exciting. Every week I read hundreds of commercial real estate articles from across the US and around the world. I connect the signals, break down the Fed moves, and share real case studies, not theory, from my 2 decades of real estate experience and actively doing deals right now. My team and I spend 15 plus hours on a weekly basis and deliver this to you for free. You can read it in 5 minutes. So every Sunday at 9:07 a.m., you'll get major commercial real estate news that matters, one Fed insights that matters, one deep dive case study from me or one of our operators who already made the mistakes, so you don't have to. thousands of commercial real estate operators and investors read this newsletter, especially in the value add space. And don't take my word for it. Check out hundreds of reader testimonials online. Plus, when you subscribe, you get instant access to a Perform underwriting tool, the same one we use every single day to underwrite value add deals. Now, this is not for you if you're looking to get rich quick schemes, or if you're looking for theory and hallucinations, not real numbers, or you're not serious about commercial real estate. But if you want real tactics, real deals, real results, no bait and switch, go to joinvaluebuilder.com and subscribe for free. And see you there, guys. So when you were wearing multiple hats, let's say developer, general contractor, broker, do you typically, in your earlier career, was that only for your projects, or that was another client involved, the principal involved, you were doing those services for someone?
Yeah, I used to build, and I actually don't tell a lot of people these days that I'm a general contractor and have been for a long time, because it makes it a little more difficult for them to try to pull the wool over my eyes, if you will, thinking that maybe I don't know as much as I do about construction and the trades. But I used to build what I developed, whether it was housing or office, retail. And then late 90s, early 2000s, the game got more complicated, and some of my projects got to the size that managing both the development and the construction was not really practical. Like Liberty Center 1, Liberty Center 2, it's like, I don't know, 100,000 square foot Class A office building. For me to handle both the development and the construction was just a large task. So that's when I started hiring a GC to prosecute the construction aspect of the development project. And so I've got one GC to manage instead of, 30, 40 trades to try to manage. And I realized I could develop multiple projects in the same amount of time as I could develop and build one. So kind of to Ben Hardy's book, Who Not How, I realized that in the early 2000s, that was not the best use of my time by any means.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think about the model for other folks? I know in industry, let's say, I think it's almost like expected that everyone is holding their lane, and broker is not a developer is not a broker, not GC. But I see it, if there is a lot of trust in a project and everything is going through a common goal, there is not really a conflict of interest. So I guess the question: how did you, especially if there is another principal, a client involved in doing all those services, how did you able to explain that this is the better way to do it, instead of you hiring everyone else and everyone is competing for that? And do you think it's a better model than just splitting the project? No, broker runs his own lane, leasing broker runs his own lane, developer runs his own lane, and everyone is almost like keeping each other accountable, right? Versus one person is handling all the ends.
Yeah, I think the nuance on my projects were that they're all me. I don't really have syndication or investors per se. It was just all me on pretty much every project I've done. I've got a couple close friends for decades, dentists, for example, that we've done and created a development company, one of our development companies, and have done a bunch of projects, and it's just a model that has worked out well. Now, trying to build, as I said, especially in the last 15 years, 20 years, has become progressively more difficult and time consuming, and a lot more exposure than there used to be. So trying to handle that aspect of it, depending on the scope and the size of the project, can definitely be problematic.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Awesome.
But I've never, to answer your question, never really had a conflict of interest issue with that before.
Yeah. But I really think it's a great model. I interviewed a gentleman from Houston. He's also doing pretty much from dirt to leasing model for other clients, and I think it's a fascinating model, actually. And he's very, very effective in that.
Yeah, one of our trademarks actually that we registered is dirt to disposition for
Wow.
all that we do. So yeah, I think the biggest, especially on the development, or excuse me, on the brokerage side, that wins us a lot of credibility and a lot of clients is the breadth of our experience, again, from dirt to disposition, from, the entitlement, the underwriting, the financing, every aspect of it. I've been and am responsible for all the way through property management and the disposition process. So we're a little bit different in our approach and perspectives than the average brokerage team, just because of that overall experience and knowledge base, which, not necessarily prosecuting all of those tasks, but understanding all of them is definitely beneficial to our clients on the brokerage side.
All right. And last thing I want to check on, what are you developing right now? What are you still bullish and what are you still bearish on which development asset class? Because I know you developed many asset classes in the past. What are you developing right now? And of course, how do you feel about office and all that jazz?
Yeah, there's as who's the quote from? Oh my gosh, I can't think of his name. I have his book here somewhere, but there's always a way, there's always more than one way, and there's always a better way. Regardless of the situation, regardless of the market, there's just always a way, there's always more than one way, and there's always a better way. And from a overall market perspective, there's always lots of opportunities out there. I look at some of these office prices and knowing what the cost of development is just fascinating. For instance, and I quiz people on this. We did a project, a hotel, anchored retail, Starbucks, all of that kind of stuff. And I held back one parcel for my own office. I was going to put a dentist and then our office in it. It's kind of out by where I live, 10,000 foot building. And I'd ask you, what do you think the entitlements, just building permits for 10,000 square foot retail building shell would be?
Just entitlement permits. That's excluding engineering work, just the permits, right?
Just stamps on paper, the extortion fees, as I like to call them.
I mean, if there is no water tap, I don't know, tops 50,000.
Yeah, $587,000, which, over $50 a foot in
$50 a foot in
permitting
permitting
before
fees.
land and going vertical and doing TIs. And you look at some of these office purchases that are being made for $100 a foot or sub $100 a foot. The new development of office is frankly cost prohibitive. Very, very difficult to make that work. What we're also seeing, and you have two things: you have demand, and then you have the ability to fill that demand from a financial perspective. Like in many markets, there is huge demand for light industrial, like what you were referring to. They're building tens of thousands of homes, but they're not building the flex and industrial space to house the plumber, electrician, the trades. And frankly, you can't right now because of the entitlement and the construction costs, because there's no way that those trades can support the rental costs required to develop that product, which is really frustrating because there's an absolute demand, but you can't fill it because the numbers don't work. Which, again, transferring that perspective, I look at some of these properties that are trading that might seem at escalated prices and compressed cap rates, but the reality is that demand is going to continue to grow as they continue to build these houses. And in my opinion, those rents are going to be rising as a result of, supply and demand, or a lack of supply for sure. One of the other things that we've done a lot of, and is a kind of a interesting opportunity, is conversion of product to commercial condominiums, drop in a commercial condominium map. I've done those types of projects since the late 80s, and coming in ground up commercial condos as well as conversions. I liken it to pizza by the slice. You buy a whole pizza, it's one price, but if you sell it off by the piece, it's considerably more money. And that's what we've done, is gone in and taken, say, a 20,000 foot retail that might have 50% occupancy, And we've systemized that mapping process and legalities of the condo map very well. And we'll sell off pieces of it and we'll lease pieces of it. And that's been a fun process because it also gets you out of the ground up construction and entitlement game as well.
So predominantly you would sell off also like a flex spaces or retail spaces. I've seen, contractor garages here, seen retail. Do you retail as well?
Yeah, I've done retail, ground up condo, as well as conversion.
Interesting. Yeah. We did an interesting project from office conversion to flex in Beaver Creek, Ohio. That was very, very fun project. And we spent $35 a foot only in converting that, from office just to flex. Pretty much demo and putting garage doors and
Yeah,
doing new mechanicals, obviously, So,
yeah.
but definitely was much easier than than to do ground up.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other product class that I'm very bullish on is QSR and drive-through
Mm.
because of the difficulties in securing those entitlements. The analogy I like is if you have an auto zone, for example, that's 5,000 square foot box that they're selling oil filters out of, AutoZone can go down the street to the next best project once the lease is up. Whereas if you have a Chick-fil-A or a Chipotle or one of those nationals that has gone through the discretionary entitlement to get that drive through, it's sort of an insurance policy that makes it very, very difficult for them to leave to go down the street. And if they do, having that drive-through entitlement in place is just a differentiator that allows you to backfill those spaces very quickly, usually, as long as you have the correct demographics and traffic counts and things like that. If you end up with a drive-through in, some little town in Iowa, that could be problematic. If you got 25, 30,000 cars driving by, you're going to be able to backfill that most likely.
Paul, thank you very much. That was an amazing interview. I really, really appreciate. Now, if people want to find you, I know you're coaching your students and you may have a project that you need, help in capital. This is the time right now. If you want to tell where you can find you, how you can help people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of interesting how quickly you become the old guy, but I've had a lot of kids coming to me with development aspirations and help them kind of work through it, which is better than signing the loan documents these days for me. But to reach me, I'm going to give you a couple ways. The website is PDF, like the Adobe file, which is Paul Daniel Frank hyphen USA.com. My email address is paul@pdf-usa.com. And then Instagram is Paul Frank PDF. And I believe that's the same on LinkedIn. So Instagram and LinkedIn are a good way to connect with me as well. And as I say, I'm easy to find and happy to help. We have a number of calls and things that we do to help people in commercial real estate and different resources. So don't hesitate reaching out.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you.
Absolutely. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Value Builder podcast. For more strategies, stories, and episodes, head to valuebuilder.co or subscribe on your favorite app. Always make it better than you found it and keep adding value. See you in the next one.